Shifting sands, understanding the new consumer. That's our theme today, as you've heard. And consumers are changing. Everything's changing, actually. Consumers are changing, economies are changing, global priorities are changing, technology is changing, the way that we all relate to each other is changing. Is research changing? That's the question that I want to look at today. We're going to talk about getting ahead of change. And that's what our panel are here to discuss today. Over the next couple of days, you'll probably hear lots of people tell you how fantastic and illustrious their panel is. But trust me, nobody has anything on my panel. We have here some of the leaders of some of the biggest research companies in the world. In fact, I was trying to work out yesterday what sort of proportion of the research business in terms of revenue these guys represent. And by my reckoning, we're looking at about a third of the global MR business here. So these are good guys to have, and we're very lucky to have them here. If I could introduce the panel, please. We have Nielsen's David Calhoun, CEO of the Nielsen Company, previously a vice chairman of DE and CEO of its infrastructure division. Thank you, David. Eileen Campbell, CEO of Millward Brown. She's been there since 2000. Previously a vice president of the Angus Reid Group. Matthias Hartmann of GfK, previously global head of strategy and industries at IBM Global Business Services. Didier Truchot, chairman and CEO of Ipsos, one of the founders of Ipsos back in 1975. And finally, Ramesh Wadhwani, founder, chairman, and CEO of Symphony Technology Group. Thank you, guys. Okay. Now, before we get started talking to the panel, we do have some contributions today from a couple of their clients who have been kind enough to record video messages for us. We have Joan Lewis, who is Global Market and Consumer Knowledge Officer at P&G, and also Gail Fugit from General Mills. And what we asked them was to tell us what these guys, what their research providers, can do better to help them as clients. Let's hear from Joan and Gail.
How can the research community best help our industry? I think we need to take this opportunity of the exploding technology and sciences around us to reinvent the insights discipline. Our last technology revolution was the internet, and in some ways that's been a missed opportunity. We didn't reinvent, we just put our questionnaires online. Now we have social media, constant mobile access, big data, neuroscience, behavioral economics, online communities. We also have unprecedented economic and demographic shifts. If we just take our old questions, like how to qualify copy, and answer them with a new tool, it's another missed opportunity. And this time, the traditional research industry has more competitors in more industries who could deliver in new ways. So we don't want to miss this one.
I'd say that the research partners are the best that they've been in the over 3 decades that I've been in the industry. They are the smartest. They are being really aggressive about coming up with new solutions. And what I would really like to see are more collaborative partnerships across the different research supplier groups. So what I mean by that is the people that are the very best at finding consumers and streaming those people, combining with the people that are the very, very best at coming up with metrics and measurement of touch points and engagement, combined with the people that are the very, very best at synthesizing that information to come up with better insights for decision making.
Okay, we also asked Joan and Gail to come up with a challenge to the research community. So let's hear what they said in answer to that as well.
I challenge the research companies to seek and hire the people who can leverage all of the ways these new insights are coming to us. The future is not new tools. There will be new tools, but the future is about having the right people.
I am so inspired by the leaders in our industry and my counterparts that help me answer the business questions at General Mills that I would really ask them to help us make sure we have the right business question. Too often over the course of my career, I feel like the business question has been transposed to fit what the research solution is. And I think we can miss our way because we have capabilities, but the capabilities are not precisely aligned to what the business questions are. And I think that that actually inhibits us from being at the decision table because we don't always answer the question that's being asked. We bring a lot of information and we can bring a lot of data and we can bring a lot of insights, but if it doesn't answer the question at the time when it's being asked and the time when the decision's being made, it lessens our impact. And I think that our research partners in the industry are uniquely able to help us with that.
Okay, so that's what's on the minds of some of the big advertisers. Thank you to Joan and Gail for providing those messages for us, and we'll come back to some of the points that they've made there in a moment. But first of all, the first question that I want to put to our panel here is what's the single biggest change that you face? Our theme here is change. What's the one biggest change that your company is facing? Each of you in turn, starting with Dave Calhoun.
Yeah, I'm not sure I use the word change or maybe just the word opportunity. It's the hand in front of your face, and it's global population growth. There's not a client I serve anywhere in the world that doesn't want to measure that first consumer the first time and know who they are and what they buy and how they think. And building a map that covers Africa or rural China or rural India and measuring it for the first time so that you can discover along with consumers where they're going, where they're headed, how they're thinking is both a big investment. It takes time to cultivate, but it's by far the biggest opportunity that we have in front of us.
Eileen Campbell.
I'd say the biggest change is really all around restlessness, and Dave hit on one of the key tensions that's causing restlessness. That's the rising power of the East in businesses that are largely based in the West. The second source of restlessness is among our clients, a little what we just heard from Gail and from Joan, the need for new and different techniques at the same time that their businesses are largely rooted in a lot of tradition. And the final one is restlessness in our people. We have incredible talent in this industry, but they're restless to do more. They're also restless to balance the commercial needs of the business with kind of doing good and the social needs that they personally have.
Thank you, Eileen. Matthias Hartmann, what's the biggest change that GfK is facing?
Well, first of all, we don't believe it's really a completely new consumer. Of course, like everybody does, I do, you all do, use the latest gadgets, use the latest technology around to inform yourself to buy. Obviously, our industry, as well as our customers, they struggle to keep up with the pace. And what I think the industry needs to do is to not throw more piecemeal, not more isolated data back at our clients, but to integrate it, to really understand what this consumer is doing. And globalization kicks in big time. It's an opportunity, nor a threat. But also these new data sources, we shouldn't be viewing them as a threat to the industry. With the right mindset, if we become the trusted integrator, the trusted source of that data, by the way, securing privacy for those consumers, which is a big thing, I think, for us in the industry, then we should be very optimistic in playing a much bigger role, helping our clients on their road to transformation. Because not every step they don't understand yet, neither do we, but we have to keep the pace and we have to keep innovating around it.
Thank you. Didier, what's the biggest change facing Ipsos?
I was just thinking, and how can I say the same thing differently? Because you know, it's a problem. So you know, the first market research company has been founded here in New York in 1911. So it's a little bit more than 100 years ago. And the company, by the way, still exists. It's a $10 million ad hoc company which is doing everything. So that's okay. So now we are, and one of the models that this industry has followed during all these years have been, in some ways, to connect what we produce, what we analyze, and what we deliver. So in some ways, we have put ourselves in a situation where we have siloed a little bit the information that we were producing, because we thought that it was relevant for us not just to look at what we are producing, to work with our clients. So the biggest change, and it has been already mentioned, so it's just that now we need to take care about all the sources of information. Of course, some other industries are moving into that space, consulting firms and many others. But I think that we have two big advantages against them. One, we are definitely neutral, so we have nothing to sell to our clients but information and a relevant set of information. And two, we know our clients' business reasonably well, and we know how this information can be or should be used by them in their business process. So because of that, I think that we will be in good shape in the future.
Thank you. And finally, Ramesh Wadhwani.
Thanks.
It's difficult, Ramesh, but you should know.
Yeah.
I would say the biggest challenge starts with the fact that today's consumer is not yesterday's consumer. Today's consumer is in charge. Today's consumer is empowered. And the consumer is really, in some sense, a state of mind. And the same consumer can be a media consumer in the evening, can be a shopper during the day, can be a patient in a healthcare system at some point during the week, is an employee during the day, and is a social animal when he or she connects to any of these social networks that we have. So I think fundamentally the view of the consumer has gotten far, far more complicated. And that in turn, I think, has led to what I would call the analytics disconnect, or the analytics or the insights disconnect. So when people talk about big data, Joan referred to big data, for example, big data is simply a definition of the problem. Vast volumes of data, accelerating velocity. Big data is not the answer, it's the problem. I've also found that big data often leads to little insights because people are so caught up with the issue of integrating data that they have little energy or little budget finally available to integrate insights. And a lot of the analytics disconnect that leads to disconnected insights is the result of an excessive focus on data and not enough about integrating across these different states of mind of the consumer, and not enough about actually connecting the dots organizationally between the teams that do research around social media, the different teams that do research using syndicated data, the different teams that do research using media data, the different teams that do research using shopper data and loyalty data. Some teams work for sales, some work for marketing, some work for market research, some work somewhere else in the organization. And we've got a serious challenge, and that's how to connect all this together to have one integrated set of insights.
Thank you. Okay. We also put the same question to Eric Salama, the CEO of Kantar, who can't be here today, but he did record a quick answer for us. So let's see what Eric had to say on this one too.
Well, I'm sure lots of the other panelists have talked about the demand from clients for much more forward-looking, actionable insights, the challenge of big data and how to integrate data from many different sources which are coming from many different areas into client organizations, and how to make sense of all of that, how to combine behavioral and survey. So there's a ton of stuff, but I would say that the thing that unites all of those things is the need for more talent in our industry and in our business. And that's the single biggest issue that we need to grapple with. We don't have enough people coming into the business. We don't have enough people who are really challenging the way that we think. We don't have enough technology people that are really changing the way that we do things. We don't have enough people who can really think big picture and integrate it. So in a naked plea to any of you in the audience, if any of you working outside Kantar fancy a career change, please give me a call. That's our biggest single issue. God, there's so many exciting things going on at the moment. We've got a business that we've invested in Boston called Affectiva, which is all about facial recognition. I think it's the first time really in the industry that there's a chance of scaling some kind of neuroscience type approach. So there's things like that going on. There's data fusion, which is happening in lots of places. But if I had to pick out one area, I would say it was mobile. The potential for what we could do with mobile, our ability to scale mobile into places like Africa, our ability to use mobile to get behavioral data and really integrate it. If I had to look at one area, I'd say mobile is the thing that we're concentrating on most going forward.
Okay, so a few recurring themes there. We've heard about globalization, population growth, this idea of restlessness, a lot of stuff about the explosion of data that we're facing, consumer empowerment, and the question of talent there as well. Now we heard from a couple of advertisers, a couple of your clients. When we hear clients talk about change and innovation in the research business, they talk about this with a very great sense of urgency. The two people that we heard from there, and many others as well, really quite demanding and pushing for more from the research business. We heard earlier on from Bob Barocci about the expectation of a transformation in market research, the idea that we're on the brink of a transformation in market research. But that's very easy to say, isn't it? Let's hear from you guys now about what you're doing to change your businesses, what you're doing to innovate in the way that you do research. And I want any of you to chip in with whatever you have.
I can tell you about the 5 or 6 different things that various Symphony companies are doing to drive innovation in the industry, and then also talk about some of the challenges in terms of the difference between customers saying they want change and actually adopting change.
Okay, what have you got?
Words are cheap, actions are tough. And on that score, I might just add that with all due respect to the many, many advertisers in this audience, FSIs are pretty much the same as they were 100 years ago. Direct mail is pretty much the same as it was 40 years ago. Your use of syndicated data is pretty much the same as it was 30 years ago. And your use of email marketing is the same as it was 20 years ago. Yes, there have been some tinkering around the margins and so on. Fundamentally, you say you want change, you are not actually rushing to adopt change in a enterprise-wide kind of way. However, having said all that, the 5 or 6 areas that we're investing in, the first is the notion of cross-media analytics. It's a multi-channel world. It's an interactive consumer. There are all kinds of self-reinforcing ways of advertising across multiple channels simultaneously or in a time-phased way. So the ability to actually analyze return on advertising investment across traditional TV, IPTV, online, mobile, social, big area of investment. Second area of investment is analytics integration around the different shopping channels. So there's, of course, in-store shopping, there's online shopping, there's mobile shopping. How do you actually get a view of customer loyalty and customer shopping behavior across all of these channels? Important area of investment.
I'm going to stop you there just because I'm conscious of the time. That I know you have a lot more to say, but I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. You're throwing the challenge back at the clients then.
I am.
They're looking to you for change. You're looking to them for change. Do the rest of the panel agree?
And I was struck. How many people watched the Mad Men debut last night? I know Belle Frank did, if she's out there. I was struck by we don't feel a whole lot different than the guys in Mad Men felt. Like they're on the brink of massive, massive change, and I think our industry has constantly been evolving. I think that innovation is a process, not a destination. I think sometimes we expect to see some giant aha when actually it's sort of a gradual evolution. I know all of our clients, and frankly all of us, would love to have revolutionary change, but we have to keep the trains running on time at the same time. So I think it's a shared challenge. I don't think it's strictly our client's problem. I think that the research industry in and of itself has to be willing to change. So,
Didier?
Go ahead, Didier.
Just two comments. One, globalization changed everything. Just because, till very recently, many companies, including many of our clients' companies, were doing most of their money in their native market, in their comfort zone. So now if they want to look for growth, if they want to look for more profit in the future, they need to go to unknown territories, so to countries and regions where they don't necessarily the ground as well. So For us, you know, the big change, in fact, is how can we be as global as necessary to go with our client in these places where they have to go.
Matthias, you agree?
Look, I'm the new kid on the block, right? I'm coming from the outside into this industry. And what I realize is that people in this industry talk very much with themselves about the change. The reason why I joined this industry is just because of that. I think this industry is at the brink of a transformation with huge opportunity. People talk about becoming consultants. I don't get it. I mean, I come from the consulting industry. What consultants do not have is data, is that insight. Exactly. We are sitting on a gold mine, but we keep talking in small thinking around.
So what are you doing about, what's GfK doing about it?
And what we can do is to do three things. Number one, use that gold mine, but really globalize the business. Don't play small country practices. Globalization changes everything. Secondly, don't look back. Of course, we have this historical data, but what our clients need is the insight and the analytics looking into the future. And market researchers don't always feel comfortable with that. So if we link the people skills that we have, take a viewpoint of looking ahead and not only back, fuse it with data and technology, we can rock this world. So I think this industry should be much more taking a deep breath, look ahead and think big, and not small, and not in isolated pockets of skill and experience.
Okay, and let me put to the whole panel, how well placed do you think huge companies like all of your own are to respond to those sorts of challenges in comparison with smaller, more nimble players who we see doing interesting things all the time? Dave?
So let me maybe try to answer both questions. We actually have an incredibly innovative industry. You happen to have the big guys on the stage whose job is mostly to innovate toward a standard, to build a syndicated standard for somebody who suggests that the industry should have one, most of which sit in this room. We are surrounded by cottage players who are experimenting with data every day, all day, doing unbelievably great things. And for us, that's opportunity to watch it, to sit around it. If and when they want to become a standard, they get to knock on our doors and or vice versa. So we actually have an incredibly innovative crowd hanging around this industry. The job of creating standards so that everyone benefits and the industry somehow gets efficient for it, that's a different job. And that's what we're challenged with every day, all day. And we have to figure out how to be innovative around that front.
But I do think we can make room for those cottages sort of in our big cities, in the big companies. I mean, we have skunk works going on all over the company where we sort of liberate people to say, go play, go come up with the new ideas that 5 guys in a garage in Shanghai might have come up with. And this idea that because we're big doesn't mean we can be innovative or frankly nimble. You know, we need to be sort of like the aircraft carrier where any given plane can take off on a quick sortie instead of being the big ship that turns slowly.
You know, by way of example, so we launched a product toward the end of last year to measure display advertising, its reach across the publishing community in a way that could someday become a standard. I happen to think it's one of the most innovative measures I've seen in my 6 years in this industry. It's got incredible reach, it's incredibly informative. Now the real work is getting the industry to somehow want to align around it. That's tough, right? They got to have to figure out what the value case is, how they make money from it, how they get more effective doing it, and we got to educate every step of the way. There's innovation in that. There really is. There's innovation in that process, and we have to commit ourselves to doing that kind of stuff.
Okay, okay. You guys are in the business of using customer understanding, using data to drive business, understanding people, using that to drive business. That strikes me as the same thing which drives companies such as Google, Facebook, SurveyMonkey, which interestingly enough, I thought that you guys were the biggest research companies in the world. I read on Google, on SurveyMonkey's website the other day, that they're actually the biggest survey company in the world in terms of surveys completed, they claim. So that's interesting. What happened? What happened? These guys have run off. Facebook are looking at 100 billion valuation. SurveyMonkey claiming to be the biggest survey company in the world. What happened, guys?
Well, first of all, you heard John Lewis that surveys will be gone by 2020. Did anyone recognize that? back to your question of innovation, and I think your notion of SurveyMonkey's progress out here is really linked to that. At Symphony, we are following a different model. We set Symphony up as a holding company with a whole bunch of individual group companies. And one of the most important things we do at the holding company is to drive innovation in each of our portfolio companies. And each portfolio company is required to have half a dozen to a dozen evolutionary innovation initiatives and at least a couple of breakthrough game-changing initiatives. And when you then multiply that across half a dozen companies that are broadly in the market research space, you can get a lot of innovation going inside your own company, which is what we're doing. Surveys happen not to be one of the areas we're focused on, because surveys, in a sense, are simply another source of data. We have too much data, too little insight. So our basic philosophy is to focus on the layer at which you integrate these insights together from these many, many, many different sources of proliferating data.
Okay.
And I would say, let's be clear, Google and Facebook are largely in the business of selling advertising. At the end of the day, there's a great deal of insight. They provide a ton of data that I think probably every one of us is using in some capacity. So I don't see them as the enemy. I see them actually as part of the equation for how we deliver great value to our clients. SurveyMonkey is just a tool, like a million other tools available to us and our clients. In fact, probably every one of us use it for some little thing that doesn't require distracting your programmer. So I don't see those things as scary. I see them as part of the big opportunity.
Okay.
I'd have two comments on that. Number one, yes, the industry has to be careful that they don't miss the train on some of the new developments. And I think that's a valid comment. That always happens if you are sitting on a golden goose and on the golden egg and don't want to cannibalize yourself. So we have to be careful to really get that and integrate it. However, overall, the pie gets bigger. We work with Google on the media efficiency panels as an example. So Google is a client, a corporation partner. But yes, of course, that data is available. Will clients use it? Of course they do. But it is just another puzzle piece of data, and it is our task to integrate it along the consumer journey, to really understand it 360 degrees.
Okay.
As long as the pie goes and becomes bigger, we have all the good competition to get a better share out of it.
All right. I want to throw this open to the audience a bit now. I know that there's plenty more that we could cover. We could talk about this all day, and I'm sure that these discussions will continue over the next 3 days. But we've got about 7 minutes left. I want to see if anyone in the audience has any questions that they'd like to throw at our panel this morning.
We can't even tell if there's an audience out there.
Do we have any questions from the audience on the subject of change? Don't see any hands going up.
May I make a comment?
Go for it, Didier.
I had a second point, so I would like to just to share it with you about globalization. No, we are in a world which is changing also because there are many more people who are more educated than before. If you look at how many people can read, write, interconnect now and what it was 30 or 40 years ago, it's a fantastic change. So it's not just, the demography is not just about the fact that there are now, 500 million Chinese who can buy bonded products, but it's also about the fact that there are 700 million or 800 million Chinese who have a phone and who are communicating one with each other. One of the big changes which is occurring right now in Africa, for instance, is the fact that because people have phones, they can do business together, even if they are not in the same village. And it changed a lot. It's one of the main drivers on why the economies in Africa are growing pretty fast right now. So we need to adapt and to adjust our way of measuring and our way to interconnect with the people, as brands need to do so. So, for instance, everything which is around what is called socializing research, which is how do we ask questions, how do we look at what people are doing, how do we measure what is going on in the stores or in or in the household have to change because simply the world is changing and we cannot speak or interact with the people as we were doing in the past. So this is for us an interesting and big change, which will help us, by the way, to create a more accurate and relevant set of information.
Let's hear from some of the rest of you about what you're up to. What are you doing to meet your clients' needs of being served globally? These are all companies with their heritage in North America and Europe. What are you doing to make sure that you can provide global coverage for your clients?
So two observations I think that are probably going to be important for this industry, looking at it globally. The first is that in a world of empowered, interactive, multi-channel consumers, the ability to meet their needs across all channels through much more targeted and personalized direct-to-consumer programs will be absolutely critical. The state of the art in our industry in terms of personalization and one-on-one targeting of consumers, whether in the US or in the UK or in India or in China, is actually very primitive. And to have this vast amount of data available and to not apply it to this extraordinary opportunity of being able to make a personal connection in a world where consumers are looking for that personal connection because that's what they get out of Facebook and other social networks, to miss that opportunity would be a real shame because I think it's a huge opportunity for our industry. The second,
let me stop you there just because we're so short of time. There's one more question that I'd like to put to you all. We're talking here about the subject of change. I'd like you to tell me very briefly, please, what you think the research company of 2022 in 10 years' time will look like. Dave, very briefly.
It'll listen differently. There is no question that the coming of the social networking world offers amazing opportunities to just listen. It's actually the job everyone wants to skip over. Most people would like today to figure out how to use social networking in some way toward their end, maybe as an earned media campaign or something along those lines. How do you place a story in there? When actually job one is to just listen to it. Like, where is latent, where is emerging demand? How do you think about it? Can you possibly identify it? And today, if you look across the industry and how people use it, the variation in how they use it is unbelievable.
Okay, so more listening. Eileen?
Well, the first thing I hope is that it's not fraught with self-flagellation, which seems to be the hallmark of our industry. The second thing is I agree that less of our data will come from direct asking, but I don't think direct asking will ever go away. None of us got into this business to be passive voyeurs. We want to be active participants in the conversation, and I think in 2012 that'll still exist. We won't touch much data, though. Data processing as we know it won't exist anymore.
Will we still be talking about being on the brink of change in 2022?
I'm sorry,
will we still be talking about being on the brink of change in 2022?
Oh, of course we will. Of course we will. I mean, I've been in this business a long time. That's the one constant. We've always been on the brink of massive change.
All right. Matthias, where will the industry be in 2022?
Well, GfK will be a trusted aggregator and a trusted integrator. And what we mean with that is we will understand our clients' industry much better and much deeper than we do today. We have a point of view on where the business value is migrating to. Secondly, we will integrate those various sources of data. So I believe there is a big shift in terms of how you have to do this compared to the old world. That was much simpler. And number three, we will have a point of view and will advise on the analytics and the future. As businesses turn real time, we don't have the luxurious situation to look 20 years back and understand all that data. We have to be much faster, much quicker to provide that value proposition.
Didier, what's your company going to look like in 10 years' time?
Once again, it's difficult for me to express exactly the same thing that my peers.
Same as his.
But, I think that our clients are asking us to be accurate, and accuracy remains a very important challenge because, we're talking about measuring in the emerging market, but it's not so simple if you want to be accurate. We need to be relevant to, of course, to our clients' business problems. And on that, I think that we need to be a little bit more active, because in many cases, we are just listening what our clients are telling us about their business, but we know a lot about their business that we should introduce more often in the discussion. And 3, of course, we need to be more comprehensive. Now, there is all this notion about how we communicate what we know, what we discover, what we found, and how we can do that with the different constituents among our clients' organization, where definitely we will do a better job in 10 years from now.
All right. Thank you. And Ramesh?
2020, I think 3 things will have happened. One is we will have a much deeper understanding of consumers across all the different states of mind, across multiple channels. We will enable advertisers to be able to connect to them one-on-one with high precision and with much better targeted messaging and influence. And most of all, we didn't get to talk about this earlier today, we will come up with a whole new set of metrics that are far more relevant for measuring consumer engagement and consumer behavior than the current metrics we're using around clicks, tweets, UVs, and other internet-y kind of metrics. They are not truly great measures of deep consumer engagement.
All right. Okay. We have to stop there. Thank you all very much. I know that we could go on and discuss these same issues all day, but we're not allowed, so we have to stop there. Thank you very much to the panel, and thank you all for listening. Thank you.